So good morning, Rabbi. We're going to go back to our regular halachot. We were up to the laws of Netillat Yadayim. So the Gemara tells us that King Solomon originally instituted the Mitzvah of Netillat Yadayim before a person eats kodashim, before a person eats sacrificial meat, in order to make sure that he does not make the meat impure. He instituted that a person has to wash his hands for Netillat Yadayim before he eats that meat. Afterwards, subsequently, Gemara Shabbat tells us that Hillel and Shammai, they instituted that the person has to wash their hands for Netillat Yadayim also for Truma. There's a 2% of the produce that a Jew has to give to the Kohanim originally. It's called Truma. And that 2% originally was mostly of grain. So therefore, before they ate their bread, which was Truma, the Kohanim had to go and wash their hands and eat the Truma impurity, and not make the Truma impure with their hands, that if they touched impure objects, they could make the Truma impure, so therefore they had to wash their hands and Netillat Yadayim. Now, after that, the Gemara Kuvav tells us that the Chachamim made another decree on top of this, that now all of Am Yisrael has to wash their hands and Netillat Yadayim, in order to remind the Kohanim that they have to wash their hands before they eat their Truma. So therefore, whenever we eat bread, to remind the Kohanim when they eat bread that they have to wash their hands, we also have to wash our hands, and that's what we do today of the Mitzvah of Netillat Yadayim before we eat bread. As the Ran says, they only instituted this mitzvah when we have a set meal, or as the Levush says, that most of the time Truma was bread. Truma was wheat, was grain, so therefore that's why they made it that when we eat bread, we make Netillat Yadayim. Now, the Yekut Yosef writes, if a person is eating a patababi kisanin, we discussed this last time, many times ago, about a person who eats, let's say, a sweet bread, or a crunchy bread, or a bread that's filled, that's considered patababi kisanin, that would be considered mezonot. If he eats a certain amount of it, he eats 216 grams, it's considered a meal, and he has to make a berkat hamazon and make a motzi on it. The question is, does he make Netillat Yadayim on it as well? Well, he made a meal out of it, so therefore maybe you should make Netillat Yadayim, because we said when you make a meal on bread, you make Netillat Yadayim. So here you're making a meal out of this mezonot, you should also wash your hands. And Yekut Yosef says you should wash your hands without a bracha, due to the debate about this subject, but a person still washes his hands even in that case if he's going to eat 216 grams of patababi kisanin. There's many halachot related to the laws of Netillat Yadayim, and hopefully we'll go through some of them. For example, a person has to have a vessel. It's critical. We know that in the temple they used to have the mehatat. The person will have the paraduma water. It would have to be in a vessel. We see that the Kohanim, they would wash their hands before they did the services from the kior, from the actual water urn that they would have there, and it would be water in a vessel. So you see that purification in the Torah requires a vessel, and therefore the Chachamim instituted that this mitzvah of purification of the hands also requires a vessel. The Shulchan Aruch talks about many requirements of the vessel, that it has to be able to hold a revi'it, it has to be able to hold at least 3 ounces of water, it has to have no hole in it, it has a major hole in it, it can invalidate the vessel, and a person should try to dedicate a actual vessel just for the Netillat Yadayim. If a person uses a disposable cup, there's a little bit of a debate about it in the Achronim. A person doesn't have any cup, he wants to use a disposable cup, that the Netillat Yadayim works, but you see that it's critical to have a vessel. The question